the topic you present is very important for me also in the moment. I every time think it's not possible to go in the same direction in the future. We have to think not tomorrow, because tomorrow is not possible to think, but after tomorrow. And this after tomorrow need also, and that's the point who interests me, a change of design, not only a change of society. We have to change also. If we will resolve all this element you talk here, we have to react a little bit differently. And for me, so in this also topic you write for today, I react on this and say we have to introduce this notion of design of relation. And with, you will see, I think we are part of this liberal competition, and we are one of the most active position of this liberal competition, who make at all that we are in competition with our neighbor. We are in competition with the country who is very near of us. We are in competition, the countries are in competition, the cities are in competition, we are in competition, and I think we have to find other solution, because that's not possible in the future if we will say not so many energy, not so many, we have to reduce, we have to. So how can we do this? And this is a little bit the topic I will try to speak this night. I'm not, I will not be in an affirmation, because it's really something I'm researching in the moment. I just think it's not possible we go in the same direction we do it before. And how can we change? How can we, and I think design, more and more, there are a big difference in between private design, design for consummation, design for one person or one family, or to buy elements, and common design. This design who is for every person's, who the factor of buying is not in connection with the factor of each can be part on it. So, and for me, this point is how can we come, and that's probably a little bit more also to do with graphic design, on this energy to say every time we have to make new, we have to make something better as the other. I think the best example is really the way that the cities represent himself. We have make the panel of all the city and the village of Italy, and look what the result is. Is this civic? Is this? Are we the production of a civic design, or did we make a liberal design? That's hard for us, huh? Because I do logotypes, and I think how can we start to say it's probably more important to make a family, to make what's the designer, the architects do, the urban design, in the way to say it's not only each house who is important, it's the connection in between this housing, and is how can we come from architecture to a city. And we have a little bit to make the same, I think, in graphic design. So, and what I also focus or reflect, I think we are in a terrible culture of visibility. We work on science, we work on elements, but at all what's the need of the citizen. The need of the citizen is intelligibility, is to understand the reality of our world in the moment. And how can we be part of this helping to understand this very, very complex world, and not only the village, but also the planet? And how can we be a factor of intelligibility and not a factor of competition of visibility, because the competition of visibility often make the element not only more legible, but more difficult to understand. I have examples like this. So I just come back from an experience in Frankfurt, the French pavilion, but we try to switch from a national pavilion to a pavilion who speak about language, to speak about the relation in between the French language and the German language. And that was a proposition I do with the curator, so in a ping pong with the curator, and we try to focus this element in a building. So we start with a logotype again, again, but it's not so important. At all what was important was this: how can we make a system who is open? A system who at all gives the possibility to work on this relation in between language, and to say at all this give a visual style who is not so, who is very simple, very relaxed, but who gives the possibility at each person to speak differently about this. So you can make more or less graphic, you can speak about the different language, about the cultural relation, about this strange situation that, how you say Tintin Milou in Italian? Milou is also Milou. The German is Struppi. Can you understand? This broke the story of Tintin. So it's another story at all. And how the language has a kind of strongness of the perception of the element. So we make different elements. But you can also make a real, not real book. Invitation. And then we come to the design of the pavilion, and this is for me the most important point. We start with a competition on left of students, and they present us a project about échafaudage, this temporary construction in metal, and we switch it in a bibliothèque. So we make a pavilion who is at all a very large bibliothèque. The point to connect it to our topic is that there are many institutions in this program, and each of these institutions had the ambition to say I'm this. So we decide to make an urban program and to say no logotype. All the logotype will be in screens, in little screens. We bring the screens back from 100% light to 30% light. It's a really good way when you will connect the reality and the screens. You have to bring the light back, I think the result is something who was very quiet. And what? So signalization, but a kind of signalization who was 40,000 books. So we bring books from French who go after to Africa. who will go in bibliothèque, and also the pavilion will be part of this transport of books in Africa. So it's a way to say, and what was the success of this element? And this just about senses, the smile, because all the fair is a very hard and nervous, and here you had wood, so it's changing absolutely the atmosphere and the sound because of the book. And this was a war, a really war from the first point to the last point, is no logotype. So no competition. And at the end, it was the situation, so a good restaurant, so the quality, we try to make quality. The result is so many persons was there, and it was possible to make in same time 3 discussions. It was possible, and everything was cool, was without stress. So a big success for all, no signature, no competition, all are part of something positive. And this, I think for me, is how can we also broke the ambition of the politicians to every time say, I have to be seeing, and to change the, we make a Gutenberg press, we connect the digital time and the old time. Also with these elements, we make droits de l'homme, déclaration des droits de l'homme, Declarazione delle human rights, who was signed from Macron and German Chancellor. So I'm very happy about this element only because it's not in the way of the normal energy. What was also very important, we asked students to make calligraphy. They work on the glasses with her own typeface. Each student had one typeface and was very interesting. And what was there was a citation of what the person say in the pavilion in real time. So when an author was 180 authors say something, we write on the, so this kind of also old technology, new technology who come together and who mix this element. Another, because of this, for me is something I'm a militant of this, is how can we make that this boring language of English, of Globish, is not English at all. Thomas, we don't understand Thomas because he comes from Liverpool, but we understand also other persons on the world who don't speak really good English like me. How can we make that this is come not to be a reduction of the cultural reality and of the thinking we know is something like one language who is seeking, who is dead each week. So it's a very quick dispersion of language, and how can we bring this element in reality? So we make a project in Switzerland, was support of a Swiss foundation, so we had to be in Switzerland, and this foundation pay at all the culture of the 4 Swiss language, and we decide to say Switzerland is not with 4 languages, was with hundreds of language. So we start to introduce in this culture of 4 languages the language of the voyageur, of the persons who come here to work or to travel. And we work on 6 different places with also calligraphy about about literature. How can we bring in the public space literature? Literature who come from different culture. How can we bring in credibility a language like this and say this can have a very poetic dimension? It's not only two or other elements. So this was a way to say how can we also, you know, after Trump say he will bring the Mexican back to Mexico, the children in America was afraid to speak Spanish. And this reality to be afraid to speak your own language is a reality we have everywhere in Europa. And for me, we have to learn from these persons. This is like, in cooking, it's okay. We become the culture of cooking, but we don't become more as this from this culture. And I think we have to absolutely work with this richness of this hundred of cultures who come in our country, in Torino and in all these elements. And how can we make that this person still able to be fiera of her culture, which is absolutely necessary if we will start to speak together and to have not a... So this was a school in Fido, whose poetry go around this element. This was in Harperswil, was 60 banks, public banks, who we write also poetry on it. And you have poetry in different language. So you have poetry in Farsi, it's not Arab, it's Farsi. You have another one in Arab. And the person asks, what is this? Is this criminal? Is this God propaganda? And you say, no, it's a poetry about wind. And what happened is this, that guys who come from this country has appropriation, a public appropriation in the public space. And I think that that's absolutely important in the moment to say it's not only acclimatization, it's not only integration. We have to enter in dialogue. And that's civic design for me. So other examples. These are only language, that's patois, not writing language. So we had Pasolini and other person, and this is symbolically the two sides of the Rhone. Three bridge we do. So it's a manifest of the plurilingual culture. This we do also in a bank. So in an absolutely other context, a new bank, a good architect who built this. And when we start to make this job, we have a meeting with persons who was responsible on this, and he say, yes, I give the parking to artists, to local artists who will make graffiti. I say, super. We start there, and then we make calligraphy, and then we make literature, and this will be the system of organizing. We organize all the elements that this can be part of the orientation. This can be part to help to find you. We know this kind of buildings are very abstract. You don't lose you not only because you don't know where you have, but also because you confondre two level. So her also the calligrapher of 9 different countries we invite to make poetry are part of this element, and the literature come vertically across this multilingual. So you see at this point, this is the place who lifts go down. So how the poetry can bring to orientation, to natural orientation, and you have the literature who go all the vertical of the building, and you have in the first 2 levels horizontal interventions. This gives element like this. And these elements are, you speak about before, this synergy we can have with the architect, with the room. We can give a kind of signification. The architect is in an abstraction at all, and we have the we have the terms, so we can bring. And I like one experience who was building from Alvaro Alto in Berlin, who was prior write Bonjour Tristesse in the window. And Alvaro Alto was enough clever to say, don't touch at this. This is very good for my building. And this come to be a symbol of his architect. So how can, I often say also, what's a Bauhaus building in Dessau if the Bauhaus sign didn't with? It's really a combination on this. So from time to time you have good combination and also not so. So all was handmade. This is also very important for, these are bankers who are only on computers, and so how can you also stress the bankers to be in contact with poetry? That's a social sentence. I don't know the effect, but it's possible one or other go change the profession. And in the back in the parking, also we work with artists, and they really do elements in a very clever way that each part of the parking are identified. Another project, probably you know it is a little bit later, is this project we do in the new school in New York. And when we start, we become this rendering from some, and we say, oof, what can we do with this? And at all, what was the inspiration was this 3-dimensional element and this way that the stairs are on the facade. And we start to make a visual visual connection on this, and say, okay, at all we can help with the typeface to say it's left or it's right, or I'm on the top or I'm on the base. So we make just a typeface who is very simple, but who give a direction. So more and more you have a three-dimensional element. So that's the part with more the normal orientation. And then we try to say we can do more with this. We can give a style, we can give different atmospheres. And we decide to make the difference from each level with adjectives. So you have outrageous or avare or responsive, and this part or sensitive. And this each time with the same our element, but only you turn this. And then after to do the three-dimensional in two-dimensional, we bring the two-dimensional again in three-dimensional, and try to make a 3D element who is based with the same logic. So this little element in the middle in the grass, but we bring it in outside. So you have this element, and this is so all this is a little bit without context. But what was for us from the beginning very important is to say, how can we express that this element is a school, and is an important school. It's the school of Hannah Arendt, is so a symbolic school of sociology, human rights, and all this. And the left part of New York is a very, very interesting school at all. So we decided to write all the on the stones who you see from the facade, all the courses you had in this school from the beginning to now. So it's a kind of history of the school, and when you see the element you see in 52, they speak about jewelry and laser, publicity, but also Great Woman in America in 62, or identity, politics, and science. So the content come out from the name of these courses, and this give at all kind of profondeur, in italiano è profondo della storia di questo scuola. And also here was very important, we do it in handmade. So the first year they work 12 months to write from the top 7 floor to the first floor this element on the so it's so it's a symbolic element who at all the effect when was finished was not so strong as when you make the work. So it's really this idea of the opening also to say in 1 year we work on this element. Another sign system I really like, because it's also in this point, how can we work on a relation? This was a Yiddish hospital in Austria, in Vienna. So for a very, very old person who has from time to time numbers on her. And this person's, the Yiddish community had a little, very sympathetic hospital, a little bit not so modern, but really sympathetic. And not so good architect. That's also from time to time you have to help the architect. And he built a building of 7 levels, very rational, very without humanity. And I think was the daughter of one of these persons, was absolutely, I find this situation absolutely terrible, and she starts to go to Pakistan to buy a cover to say each beds has to be different. We have to make the culture of human inside of this building, and they ask us to make the sign system. And we decide to make the sign system on the base of the 7 days of the week, who's for Yiddish very important symbolic also. But in say the sign system can rhythm at all the hospital, and on Sunday happens something on the level of Sunday. On Tuesday is a little concert on the level of can be very little, but this makes that the other person go back at this level, and that the community start again to be in a relation. And we didn't have money to do this, so the director and the architect was absolutely, we had strong work to convince them, keep the old art pieces, well, not so beautiful, but well, no, to keep, confuse, da non mettere dalla benna. And we say we are able to make it in a credible way, and this is the best orientation. For old persons, it's not a file, it's not a text, that's orientation. So this was one of the elements, and the second one was to say they at all they buy this kind of stairs and tables who was functional and all this, but the atmosphere was terrible. So we decide to we find in the theater decor objects, and we paint the wall. We take this kind of element, and this change absolutely the places. So each place has its identity, has its intimity. That's for me also design, to say we accept to don't be hip and to don't be to work on this context. And for me that's also one of the topic is contextualization. If we will go out of this system of repetition, who only our genius will be the different, we have to work better with the context, to just accept that we don't do the same elements when we are in an hospital or when we are in a nightclub. So we come now to elements of representation. I speak before about the way that city represent. This was a proposition to give a similar logotype at a metropole. To say at all, what is a metropole? A metropole is a grouping of communes around a big city, and mostly the big city eat all the other communes. So the other communes react and start to make logotypes and so on. And we say perhaps we are able to make a system who makes that we are the same logotype. Probably I have to go out and in. Just one more. So it's good. So to say each of these commune has the same but also the difference. And we work on this little difference. We have a same language. Each has his identity and can speak, but each presents the fact that he is a part of 28 other elements. So that's relation, and not concurrent. And at all was really successful. The most of these communes accept to do it, and they know that that's a way to be part of something. We work a lot then about maps and other elements, or about this was a campaign for the TGV. So it's, you understand, huh? It's Oh, this was also a cultural element this summer. We make a film of 2 hours, who are just what you see when you look at the window of the train. So you had just this was on the. We make a research who, for me, presents best what we are every time doing when we make a corporate identity, when we make this was a research of 3 years, and the idea was to bring in legibility the content, the sapere, the knowledge of the university and not the university. To say we have at all what the university is a creation, is a diffusion of element, and all this is very more important as the signature of. So how can we go from this logo type who say you are part of to a system of identification who represents the sub? I don't know if it is the same in Italy. That's an university. Huh? That's the University of Strasbourg. Each institute has his logotype, each department has his logotype, and that's the result. Huh? So then mostly the graphic design come and say that's chaos. I take one logotype and the other are out of visibility. And for me that's not the point, because if we come to this means that there are a need of representation, a need of visibility. And how can we, in the same time, be visually coordinated and different? And we have to propose this. Not to say only we make a logotype and the other has to, they are so sad, we make one element. So other elements are this, but the most, I think it's the same also in Italy, huh? Acronym. So we speak about, we have a law about accessibility. Huh? A law who say we have to make that each institution are accessible, but we sign like this. We find 820 acronyms in the university. We make the collection, and nobody understands all. So this means that's a way to bring in. So this was just this example of the way we speak in these commissions. When we start to make the information graphic, you see it's too complex. That's 1 of 9 part of all the university, so you need element. What you also see is that when you make the analysis of all the name of this element, you have same elements who are naming differently. So you have centre d'études or laboratoire, centre, bureau, équipe, and this means all a kind of laboratory. And you have this element. So we decide to accept this reality, but to take every time le déroulé, to take the name, the complex name, and when there are difficulty to understand what it is, we take the name of the division. We take the logotype, no problem, but we take it in a way that it's neutral. It's not concurrent. It's a way of identification. And then, and this is very important in this kind of institution, is to say this part is a part of University de Strasbourg, who is connected with CNRS and with the university, so this relation. And how can we make a design who integrate all these elements. We also decide to say, okay, we make a typeface for this element, that's the identity of this institution, but at all we have what the knowledge is something other, and the knowledge has to have another expression. We make open source typeface, and we play in between these two elements. So this brings us really to understand that often this identity is broke at all the base, who is understandable for a factory, but who is absolutely not right for institution, because the richness of an institution is the differences, is this capacity, or the richness of a city is to have an opera and in the same time a good service of sanitary and all this. And how can we don't, with our branding, don't bring all these elements in invisibility, but say there are a synergy, a relation in between this. Another point who we work on design of relation is a new subway system of Paris. It's not new, it's just 5 new lines and one very symbolic line who turn around Paris. Paris is this, it's the inside. And in the history of the centralistic construction of France, you have in the center Châtelet, Les Halles or Notre Dame, and everything is in radial, in radial construction. So if you will go from here to here, you go to the center and come back, who can be very long. In the moment you have Paris, and the metro is Paris, and the project is to bring the metro from this 2.5 million inhabitants, because Paris is only 2.5 million inhabitants, and Le Grand Paris, this large cities, are 12 million inhabitants. So how can we bring inside of Paris all these 10 million inhabitants? That's Google Earth map. So we know some places, but at all this periphery is out of mental map, and this is one of the topic we work. How can we give a mental map at these places? And when you see the historical map, you see you have every time inside, outside, and the center was large and little cities around. That's the construction of the subway maps, who are more and more complex. And what we propose at all is to say, okay, you can make this element, but we introduce one line who is circular and who gives the possibility to understand the other elements. And it is not perfect, but you just have to extend a little bit the verticality. You go from there. But the political situation is very more complex. So that's a line, and you have so many communes. Each commune is a little city, so it's not possible to make polycentral element at all. And the work is how can we introduce or help with our mental map this kind of external centrality, and to say this has to come to be cities who will never be same large as Paris, but who are really good cities. Why the circle is because this gives the possibility to, in the moment, all the maps are every time from Paris, all the Paris So it's not leasable. A circle gives you the possibility to just make an extract, and every time you know where you are around the element. So also, if it is just one station, you understand this situation. So after this was many work about how can we work on this mental map, how can we bring from this dimension of information and real information, real life information, real time information, and this credibilization. How can we make systems you can have on the pocket, but also on the trains, who give you the possibility to have perspective and to come to a map. These are all different works who will change a lot, because the finishing of this work is 2024, and in 2024 we don't know what the technology will be. So we are really in, we go in a way to let the system open, to give the definition of the element who you need to at this time, but to have the capacity to change for elements. And in the moment, the architects, 40 different architects, make 67 buildings, rail stations, and we have to say how many places the information has to be. So at all, we give a kind of red line of the different construction and conception of the different. And this is also, we work a lot about, I don't have the, I don't take one example of the sign system. But everything will be in 5 languages also, in French, in the 5 most used language in the world, not Italian, but will be in English, French, Chinese, Arab, and Spanish, who is symbolically very, very strong. This is also a proposition you can do as designer, so you can stress the politicians. And they accept the 5 most biggest language, and then they control, they see Arab, but it was too late. It's possible they do. So I was coming back a little bit to the first point. How many time I still have? 10 minutes. To this questioning the design, and to ask again if the design really make us happy, and who make the design happy, and how many time, and the design makes somebody also unhappy, and what is at all design? I think the this definition has every time to go up again. This was on Montreal. We do it also in a participative way, a little book by Lars Müller, who we ask designers to make questions about design, was very successful. So it was an installation by Elisava in Barcelona. And the book who go with this, who ask, so each time you have the name of the designer who asks something. I go quick because I will present this one. No, I don't present this one. This is a work. So why questioning? Why? Sorry, I'm a little bit. Why questioning? For me, the questions are something very strong. It's a good methodology to open and let open systems. And this was a work we do in a prison terrible prison. The story of this prison is absolutely, it was 9,000 British and resistant and in the wartime who was killed, and then was 120 Algerians who was condamné à mort, dan morte. Not killed, only 11, but 120 was under this prison, and the prison ended in a woman prison. So 100 years of terrible history, and we decided to don't make the story of the prison, but to ask questions about the history of the prison. And this gives us very more possibility to, to don't affirm this was like this because we are not historian, and the historian don't say nothing if they are not absolutely sure it is. And the other way is that at all the persons who read this has to do something. And often when I start a project in a museum or like this, it's so beautiful because you meet a scientist and the scientists don't know and they ask. But what the public at the end see from the exhibition is every time affirmation. So how can we let this very, very exciting moment of scientists who are in a research, who will know some element, who can say, yes, probably it was like this. So, and this was the method. We make 1,500 questions. Who was questions we ask alone in writing books, in reading books, or in interviews with old prisoners, or in so was a one summer walk, and then we come with all these panels. These questions was directly connected with time of this prisoner, with the history, and yeah, this give a kind of installation. And what is interesting, because this prison was a memorial of the war, and they decide after this exhibition to make it as a memorial of detention, of a prison at all. So they open the topics, and that's for me a very large success. Again, handmade, but with wool who was of quality. So how can you mix perfection and this human dimension? I present you something who will be exhibit in Montreal. In Montreal next week, end of next week, is a very important congress, social congress, about the topic is 10 days to change the world, and is a design congress. So it's how the designer can be part of this changing. And we make an exhibition about different topics who we take in connection this reality of the world, a little bit what you do for your competition next year, and how can we represent it at all. And how can we, again with questions, try to stress a little bit the yet situation of design, or just to reflect at all, but not in an affirmation, just in each person can go out and read what he will. So it's I suppose you will find it on Facebook and other medias. Just to explain, it's a little story. We was invited to make a contemporary art identity for manifesta, and we decided to because the title was what people do for money, to make the work Otto Neurath do in the 20s of the last century, 30s in the last century, to make a sociological analyze about what people do for money in the moment. So we make the design of a new kind of system. In the moment we can do it with informatic, so it's more easy as what they do at this moment. So it's a very simple element of make a jacket on a, but you can turn it and you can start to bring it in situations, and this start to be say something about money. So this was we do this in the on the street. We try to present a little bit this kind of situations. Was at all, I think, important, but still in a cadre who was who couldn't be independent of the promotion of the manifestation. And then this was the science system to go at this manifestation. And then we decide to use again the same system to make a book. And we make a book with attack. And my desire was to make an analysis of the yet. And my ambition was to make something with diagrams and with how can we explain at our daughters and sons the functioning of this world and the topics, this future reality who we have to resolve at all. And I understand something very, very for me important is when you see statistic, 90% of the statistic are again competition. In the way that Italy, German, France, and you compare, but that's not the topic. If you will understand the word, you have to look at the synergy on all this, and then you start to see some elements who are very interesting at all. The causing of population, that's not new, but it's very interesting to see that in between 80 and 1927, they need 123 years to come from 1 million to 1 million. How's the name in English? Triad, huh? Triad. Billiard to 2, and in between 99 and 2011 was 12 years, and go up to go a little bit longer. So it's interesting. And then there are elements, that's the problem of the book, who are very, in 2016, end of 2016, we had the information that 60% are same rich as 50% of the persons who are not rich, who are the loser. And when we bring the book out, comes the information that there are now 12%. So 12% are same rich as half of the population of the world. So we make an erratum. So yeah, how can we explain this kind of element of In 2010, there was 388 persons who was same reach as the health of. Now there are 16 or something, or 12. I don't remember. So now I use this element as a tool, and I work with this. How also to say, okay, I didn't need every time to make a new system. Thank you.